Friends and family, welcome back to a new take on our discussions on board. Today we are talking about loneliness, but as always, we were trying to think of a question to ask each other so you can get to know us a little bit more. And so we're currently in the middle of a debate on which one we should answer. So I was proposing that we ask each other, who would you be alone on an island with? And you could pick anybody, somebody dead, alive, from your family, personality, your dog, anybody. But I think people are a little torn on if we should ask that question. Akshay, what do you think?
I think we can add a twist to it by saying we have to pick someone who is alive and also part of Chitalayam. So it would add a bit more pressure.
Yeah, the alive part is important because we've had a lot of members in the past.
We are a new organization. We've only been around for a year-ish, year and a month, and I think most of our members are still breathing.
Okay, so I guess we're going to go with you have to pick somebody from our group to get stuck on an island with. So I'm not going to go first this time. I'm going to let Ilakkiya take this one.
Wow. Okay. I am gonna pick Kanika. She's the other co-founder of Chitalayam, and we were neighbors in our first year of college. So we have had so many good conversations. So she'd be wonderful company to talk about life, the meaning of life, which I'm sure we'll be thinking about if we're stuck on an island together. And she knows medicine. So if we start getting sick, I'm sure she'll have some ideas for what we can do. And we are both intelligent women, so we will figure out a way to survive on this island. That's my take. Who wants to go next?
Who's going to go next?
Vyaas.
Yeah, for me it's a toss up between Akshay and Boshaga, because I haven't really talked to Boshaga much. So maybe stuck on an island during the pandemic would be a good time to get to talk about his experiences. And he shared this one story where he had gone camping, so he knows a bit about chopping wood and surviving in the wild when it comes to living in an island. So things like that, I think, tips the scales in favor of Boshaga. And I really like his accent as well. So it's pretty cool, and I just love the way he talks. So yeah, I think it's going to be Boshaga.
Yeah.
Oh,
Akshay, what about you? Or Sia, go ahead.
Mine is pretty clear. It has to be Akshay for me, just because I'm not interested in increasing the longevity of my life on an island. I just and I feel like Akshay and I have had conversations about anything and everything under the sun. And between us, we know like enough languages to keep things interesting. I know 5. He knows, I'm pretty sure, like 4, I think, or right? Yeah,
I don't
4.
think so.
Yeah, he does.
I know 3.
Anyway, it'll be fun, is my point. I think Akshay is great, like party company. So that's my answer. What about you, Akshay? No pressure.
I actually know a lot of these people in Chitalayam, so I was thinking like who it is. But now that somebody has picked me, I also know that they want to spend time with me, and that's something I respect and appreciate. So I'm picking Sia as well.
This is how you form healthy connections.
Very honorable.
This is not fair. You guys are just picking each other. I feel like there should be another twist to this.
Being stuck on an island is not twist enough for you?
Yeah, sure, yeah. But I mean, I think that was the killer answer by Sia when she said she doesn't want to live any longer than her predetermined time on the planet. I think that's a good feeling that I think all of us would share. No matter which person you like, it's hard to be on an island for that long. So yeah, that's interesting. I think so. Moving on, so it's hard to be even if you like the person, and even if you want to spend time with the person, there can be times when you don't want to spend any more time with that person, or you want some time to be by yourself. So we're going to talk about that aspect in this call, where we share stories, life experiences, maybe some examples about how loneliness can affect people, in today's world, especially during the pandemic, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, what it's going to look like, and so things like that. So I'd like to start with by defining a little bit about loneliness and talking about like what the evolutionary perspective would look like. So the loneliness, the way I see it, is kind of like a lack of like a single person or a connection who you can really trust or who you can really open up to. So not having that person at the right time would fall under the umbrella of loneliness. So from an evolutionary standpoint, like um, loneliness is like a difficult people or members of the clan or members of the group who were lonely were more likely to be left off, and because they didn't really gel well with the group, or they were just not ready to help the group in any way. So things like that played into where the more you form a society, or the more you mingle with people, you have more chances of survival. So that was the aspect of loneliness. So that's different from the day and age we live now. So where there's also the flip side of solitude, where there are people who are comfortably, you can have moments where you're comfortable by just being yourself. So yeah, so my question, or you guys can carry this conversation forward. So what do you guys think loneliness is to you, and how is it different from solitude, or what's it going to look like in this pandemic times?
So I actually have like a different take on the evolutionary thing that you said, because I feel like that example of people get ostracized is more for social conformity and why we try to do things to fit in with the crowd. Because if you did things that were way too different, then you get ostracized and you can't survive alone in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
So you did those things. But like another thing with loneliness is that, like you said, it's like not having enough people. But the interesting thing is you can feel lonely even when surrounded by people. And
Mm-hmm.
I think right now there's some people describe it as like an epidemic, like people are like hella lonely. A lot of people are lonely. And even when you could consider now to be a more socially connected age through social media, right? You are still friends with people from way younger in your life. So you're connected to more people, but you can still feel lonely regardless of how many people are around you, because it's just a state of mind in terms of how you feel about, are you connected with people? Are you alone? Do you feel wanted by others? Do you have meaningful things happening in your life? And so regardless of where you are, you could be lonely. And the pandemic definitely made it worse, I would say, because it physically made you alone, which is the easy slippery slope into being lonely, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with Ilakkiya, and well, one thing I would say is, like it's similar to what she said. Like it's not just about like not having people. It's about not being able to reach out to people because you think either you're not allowed to, or you don't get to. And sometimes, like I've seen people just say, yeah, just reach out to people. That's like saying to homeless people, hey, get home. And that makes no sense. So there is more to it, because they feel that they can't reach out. And then it's a very nuanced topic and a nuanced feeling that you actually need to address properly. And some people go for cognitive behavioral therapy to get out of these things. And saying that, like and by saying, hey, like just talk to people, sometimes you're sort of minimizing what they're actually feeling.
Right, right. I think you make such a good point about not telling people who feel lonely how to fix it. Because belonging, I think, is the kind like the key factor differentiating being alone and loneliness. Because you can be alone pretty comfortably if you feel like you can re-enter a community where you belong or just reconnect with people anytime you want. But loneliness can be on like different magnitudes too. I remember having this moment one time where I realized, I don't know if you people have seen it, it's that video of how small the earth is compared to the rest of the universe as we know it. And then they were like, oh, the lonely blue planet, and you're supposed to, feel better about that, but it just made me feel very isolated. And I said, wow, really, really lonely, huh? Um, so it can be on different magnitudes, and I feel like not a lot of people like being alone or will choose to, but I feel like everyone has felt lonely or not completely understood at different points of their life, and that makes them feel like, wow, it's just me and my feelings, it's just me and my thoughts, or I'm always going to feel this way. So, bouncing off of that, I'm wondering, um how do you differentiate between loneliness as an uncomfortable emotion or state and just being alone?
I think the biggest difference is one is personal space, and people do need it. And as yeah, you just said, like it's knowing that after you have your personal space and like do what you want to do, being able to go back to that community where you get to be with people, like have the human connection the way that you want it, and knowing that you can get it is like a big thing. Whereas when you're lonely, it means that you don't know if you're going to get it or if you're ever going to get it, and that's a big difference. And then, as Vyas said, like being lonely and solitude are like big things, right?
I would say that the difference between being alone versus the state of loneliness was kind of answered in your question itself, because alone is like a physical state. I would say like the only way to define being alone is no one is around you. You are by yourself. That is what being alone is, compared to sitting in a room of people. Like you are not technically alone there because there are people around you. But loneliness is the emotion, the state of mind, the feeling. I would say it's more of a feeling. And then there are emotions associated with it. And aloneness can be peaceful. It can be calming. It can have a lot of different um, attributes to it. Because you could be alone and jamming out. You could be singing at the top of your lungs because no one's listening, and that's like super high energy. And that's possible with being alone. Or you could be calm, meditative. You could be vibing out. You could be sleeping. There's a lot of possible emotions with aloneness, and with loneliness, it's mostly negative emotions like self-doubt, like feeling really bad about yourself, low self-esteem, or feeling isolated, which can have a lot of detrimental effects overall. I think you could even throw in like stress and anxiety about yourself, your connections, your worth. Those are all possible things with loneliness, and that's the distinction between the two.
Yeah, those are that's the way kind of I look at it too. And the thing about loneliness, it's not like an alien emotion that only some people experience. So it's like a very common, normal, human thing to feel. So as much as how when scientists or philosophers think about human emotions, they say the one thing that's common is pain and suffering. So that's like one of the that's like a very common emotion that everyone experiences, no matter age, their the way where they're from and things like that. So loneliness is like a very common thing, and there's a lot of documentaries that have explored that, and uh, looking at how aging populations in countries, how loneliness at different time points, like different time points of your life, like when you're a college student, midlife, and then when you're after retirement. So there are countries facing where when you're retired, there's no one to take care of. Probably the sons and daughters, they have their own lives and they don't want to take care of the old people. So things like that, and rates of suicide and things. So those are all tied into this. And loneliness is like a normal emotion. Like you don't have to feel bad if you feel lonely. Like it's almost I've faced situations in college where, there are times I felt lonely, and it's almost as if it's like a molting phase. Like, think of a butterfly or a caterpillar that stays in its larva. So it doesn't know that it has like a life ahead of it, life ahead of it, when with other butterflies and like in a garden. But it has to go through that phase where it's in that cocoon and trying to get out. So you can think of loneliness like that. It's almost as if you feel that way, but there are ways to get out of it, and this too shall pass. So think of it like a sort of metamorphosis state. It can be hard during those times, but it's something to keep in mind. Yeah. What do you guys think?
Yes, once I heard like what you said, like I kind of thought about the fact that like, would you be able to say that all of us are fated to feel lonely at some point of our lives? Because you said everyone gets to know what
Yeah.
that feeling is.
Yeah.
So we do live in a world where you're fated to be alone or feel the loneliness at some point.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I don't know what, like, fated to be lonely, but it's a it's a universal emotion is what I can say. Yeah, I don't know about fate, but it's not like a permanent state that you reach. So fate seems like there's a sort of permanence to it, but it's not necessarily that. Yeah, yeah, the loneliness aspect. Yeah, I agree. It's a universal feeling.
Yeah, the description of being fated to be lonely is definitely more permanent.
Yeah.
But I like Vyaas's take on how loneliness can be a period of change. Because at least thinking back on the times that I've been lonely or felt lonely, it leads to a lot of introspection for me. So if I think more about myself, then I'm more likely to figure out things I might want to change to avoid being lonely in the future. Because for me, at least, it's a sad feeling, a sad state of mind that I don't want to be in for too long. So the interesting take, and how it can be used for good change.
Yeah, with loneliness, philosophically speaking, I think it's sometimes a price we pay. Not all emotions are meant to be felt consistently. So if you feel like you belong, you will for sure have moments where you feel like you don't. Anything that goes up has to come down. Like, there will be moments where you get information that is contradictory to what you believe. It's just the emotion that you build a house in, if that makes sense. So if I feel like I belong, I will definitely have moments where I feel like nobody understood me, or, I'm, it's hard to connect with somebody on every aspect of your personality, right? Because we're like layered individuals. So no one is going to completely approve and be able to connect with you intellectually, physically, emotionally, all
Right.
of these things. So if I build my house on, oh, this person doesn't understand this aspect of me, instead of, the parts that they do, then I feel like, yes, I am going to be fated to be lonely if, I'm taking that emotion as the truth, or I'm saying, oh, this is the truest one. The belonging is not what was true. But I also hesitate in, staying in the philosophical realm with this, because I remember reading like loneliness is one of the emotions that contributes the most to premature deaths, like you said, Vyas, or, just complex comorbidity with other psychological, challenges. So I wonder what the difference is between loneliness that's almost clinical or loneliness that's very pervasive, and just like a fleeting emotion every now and then.
Yeah.
Even though we can all be on board saying, like loneliness sucks, we still tend to do, like these are deal breakers for me, or these are my pet peeves, don't do it, and things like this will trigger me. And, like it comes from varying stances. And at times it is important that, like to know what bugs you, what ticks you, and knowing that is good. At the same times, sometimes that is who the other person is, and you're just like telling them to eliminate a part of themselves to be part of your circle. And I think that kind of plays a role in for us being lonelier, because we know, once we know something bugs you, instead of working on it to see, hey, how can I be more patient with this, we are rather more like, okay, it bugs me. They can there's enough fish in the sea, there's enough people in the world, I can find people that don't do it. And by doing that, the people who are not able to do it, or people who have few qualities like that people generally don't like, are seen as sort of like excluded from everything. Or what are your thoughts on that?
So definitely true, but I think about it in a different way. I would say in response to like pet peeves and things like that, because when I was in elementary school, people would find like they would have disagreements about certain things, and then they basically formed their groups. It's like, are you on her side or are you on her side on this issue? And that happens a lot. But I know that a few times when I've had disagreements with friends about the things that they do, I'd be like, okay, we're not going to talk anymore. We're not going to be friends. And it, I feel super lonely because I feel like I lost that connection. Like I was the one who initiated the we're not friends anymore, or we're not going to talk. But then I feel so bad myself about it, and I just think about it a lot, and I feel lonely. And then I see like she's going on with her life, right? But I'm here still sitting about the fact that like I chose to break this, and how do I feel about myself? And I'm if thinking about it now, I could probably characterize that as loneliness. And it so later on, like it made me go back and try to repair that relationship, say like, okay, it's sorry, like I accept it now, or um it's cool whatever you're doing, or we can still be friends, and whatever it was. So it can, yeah, that's how, like, I guess pet peeves could relate to loneliness. I feel like you said something towards the end, and I'm missing that right now, but yeah.
But yeah, that's a terrible situation, right? You either have to swallow your pride, and irrespective of whether you're on the right or you're on the wrong, you have to be the one who has to apologize. Or the person who basically heard the other person say, "Yeah, I don't want you in my life. I don't want to be friends." And even though you've said harsh words, they have to be like, "I understand you're saying harsh words, but I need you." So, and then they have to like put the work. And either person doing the work, it's not an easy situation to do. And I mean, the easiest situation here, the path of least resistance, is to not talk at all.
Yeah.
Isn't that the path of resistance, to be stubborn and not talk about it and be like, okay,
Yeah.
fine, is that how you want to go? Cool. That's like some amount of resistance.
You can go ahead.
So that made me think of a question almost, that when it comes to boundaries or knowing the standard that you want to hold people to in your lives, if loneliness is the thing that you're scared of, and if you're thinking, oh, I shouldn't draw this line, or I shouldn't, I shouldn't push this person away by establishing a boundary because I don't want to be lonely, then would you consider loneliness as a skill that we should all be building, so that that's not the thing that we're scared of, so we can hold people to better standards in our life? What do you have to say about loneliness being a skill? Do you think you can practice it? Do you think you can intentionally get used to it?
Just handling loneliness as a skill, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, maybe there should be a crash course, like in every, like schools, like in the education system. That'd be pretty nice. Yeah. So that. Oh, that's pretty interesting.
Are you asking it in terms of you make it a skill for people to reflect on their loneliness and create it as a way for people to be like smart and accountable about their actions? Like someone in your life, they do something stupid, and consequently they start feeling lonely about it because of the way you interact with them, and then they use their loneliness to get better, or you use your loneliness from this person to change the way you interact. Is that what you're talking about, Sia?
No, no, not even. So, more like, okay, let me give you an example. So, in the past, when I've been part of a connection where I knew I should have drawn a boundary and like cut this person out of my life, I was scared of being lonely, and that's why I didn't do it. and any objective person could have looked at our interactions and said, this person does not deserve to be in Sia's life. Like they're not treating her in the way that she deserves to be. And in that moment, I feel like if I would have been more familiar with being with myself or being
Mm,
alone or accepting my loneliness, then I would have been more courageous about cutting this person out of my life instead
Wow.
of, letting them continually transgress my boundaries or, just allowing people in just because I don't want to be alone. So in that sense, do
mm.
you we could benefit from learning how to be alone? And if yes, how would one person do that?
I actually agree that sometimes it's better to be comfortable with being alone than being with the wrong person. And for
Agreed.
example, like this COVID times, right? So if somebody is like not vaccinated, and and then like they're also not following any of the protocols, and you might be potentially like meeting immunocompromised people or just like elderly people, then that's a space where, I mean, you could be a great person, you could be a good person, or you could be a bad person, but my boundary is that I don't want this person to die, and this person is important to me. And or it could even be a stranger in the road who might be old and who might get COVID because of because I hung out with you, and that is not something I want to have in my life, because that would be a big regret. And so it is completely okay to have boundaries. It's just that like when you do have boundaries, think twice, because potentially the moment you draw a boundary, it could also bring you loneliness. So you have to know which one is better and which one makes more sense.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, so which one makes more sense at that point in your life? Like for instance, let's say during these COVID times, there are maybe kids and people who are living at homes where they have someone who's abusive or who's talking ill about them. So there are times where maybe if you leave, you may not have you may not feel like you have the resources to survive. So at those times, maybe trying to put up with, or trying to, at least for that time period, maybe you have to analyze your options. So it's difficult to to tell which is the right answer, like point blank. It depends on a case by case basis. And so the loneliness activity, I think it was someone who mentioned, I don't know if it was one of you guys, like in an earlier call a couple of months back, where we discussed yeah, it was crying. And there was someone who mentioned, so they had an activity in a class. This would be a great activity for like a loneliness course. So activity in a class where the teacher, I think, just said, okay, think of a sad feeling or emotion and just start crying in front of your peers now. Do you guys remember that? I think it was Boshaga. No? Okay. So it was Boshaga. I think he mentioned Boshaga or some other member. So they had conducted this activity in their classroom where the teacher just asked them to cry in front of their peers. So no one cried for like the first 5-10 minutes. It was almost like a chain reaction where after one person started crying, and so the teacher was trying to make sure that was trying to make them aware that crying in public is okay. So you don't have to feel ashamed about it. And loneliness often comes with crying. So cry. So that activity would be something interesting to find out what people feel when they start crying, and that can help you with dealing with this loneliness when you're alone, maybe
Hmm.
reflecting on these activities. So things like that would work. Yeah. Akshay, yeah, you wanted to
I
say
mean,
something?
that's interesting. I actually want to say, like by saying, boundaries are bad, you can also start saying, like breakups are bad, divorces are bad, and so, there are levels to it, and an abusive relationship, you shouldn't get out of it because, like, what if you're lonely? No, like, you should get out of it. It's abusive relationship, and so that's something that came from mind when you said something about abusive
Mm.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And see, in response to the using loneliness as a tool, along with help that kind of solitude and introspectiveness and like just the feeling of being lonely and being able to acknowledge it in a way that is helpful to create boundaries and set boundaries and potentially, cut out people that are bad for you. I think it can also help um, create new good connections because, different people, in many ways, loneliness can help with that. Because if you're lonely and you're crying, because like Vyaas said, those are connected. Um, people are likely to come to you and talk to you and comfort you and listen, right? So in that case, you can find a good friend. Or your loneliness can make you introspective about like what is making you feel lonely and recognizing it. So when I came to college, one of the things was that I wanted to have a big group of friends, and I wasn't really getting that easy. I only had like a few really good friends, and I felt lonely because of that. But repeated loneliness throughout my entire first year in college made me realize that I don't necessarily need a huge group of friends, right? Like the few friends that I have that are quality friends is something that not a lot of people actually get. And that's something that some people even want because their connections are all social and shallow and they're not really meaningful and deep. And so I did have something that was meaningful, and I learned to, value the friends I have even more in a way. So loneliness could be used for like getting rid of bad friends, but also further qualifying and appreciating good friends that you might have and the way that people react to your loneliness.
Right. That's, you said something so special right now. React to your loneliness, because every time I'm part of conversations about, if someone is trying to be derogatory towards someone, they'll say, "Oh, you're just going to end up lonely, or you're going to be like that person with a lot of cats." And it's all, why is, I keep wondering why and how did that become an insult? Because yes, like being alone can be a choice for sure, but how is it that we react to people's loneliness? Why do we react that way?
Well, I'm sorry, I missed the second part of the question. Second part of your question. What was it?
Oh, I was
Sia.
just asking, why do you think we react so negatively to people being alone by themselves or
Oh,
just being lonely, and we think of it as like the worst outcome in somebody's life, that
right.
you're just
Yeah.
end up lonely. Yeah, what do you have to say about that?
Simple answer: because they're social animals, and the worst punishment we could have as social animals is to be unable to be social. If you die alone, it means like no one cared about you, no one had meaningful relationships with you, you had no meaningful relationships with anyone, nothing
Right.
you did mattered in a way. So that's why to be alone is considered an insult, a negative thing. And
Right.
In a weird way, it could also be tough love to say, hey, uh, maybe you should look at yourself and like change a few things. And tough love works when the tough love is actually understood by the other person and not seen as anything else. So it becomes tough love not because you're tough with them, but rather they understand it in that way. And by saying this, like let's say you don't really go out much because you actually feel that you're actually sort of afraid that like people are going to judge you for this or that, which you do think that because of the spotlight theory, which I can put in the description. So because it happened to you, you tend to think that it's a pretty big deal, and people judge you just as much as you judge yourself. And at those times, somebody saying somebody who might not, like let's say your mother or your father, who might not be there with you physically, and wants you to have a good relationship, or have a time of your life with your friends, uh, they they can't really do that, when like they're their own city and then you're in your college or school or whatever. And so for that, the next thing they can do is sort of like motivate you to reach out to people and like hope that when you reach out, good things happen. And so that sometimes it is happening with good intentions, but of course, if you have to whenever you show tough love, you have to know that if it doesn't go the right way, then it's on you, not on the person. they're already feeling bad, and then you show tough love, and if they don't react well, then you have to do something about it.
Amazing point at the end. Just gotta say that.
So I'd like to move on to this one, this clip that I watched by Trevor Noah. So he had specifically made this one segment where he talked about something called Zoom dysmorphia. So I hadn't really heard of that phrase before. So what he was essentially trying to say was he started that segment by talking about filters and the prevalence of filters in social media, and he was talking about this interesting concept where if an image is digitally altered, it'd be nice to have like a little icon at like the bottom of the image which says this one's digitally altered and this is not the real person. So the reason I'm talking about all of these points is that this ties in with the concept of loneliness as well, because since the time you spend by yourself, you tend to spend more time on your phones, you spend more time on social media, and having these images or trying to trying to put on the best possible version of yourselves, like or like on a Zoom call. Like, it's fine if you're just normal, if you woke up and you have like a work meeting, you don't have to be perfect all the time, like when you have a Zoom call. So, and he was talking about cases where people are obsessed with maintaining this really great image of themselves at all times, because since they're not actually meeting people, the only way they can showcase the best possible version is through Zoom calls. So it's important to keep in mind that when you're lonely, you spend more time on these phones, and it's good to keep in mind that the digitally altered images and seeing all those, trying to put your compare yourself against them is not really gonna help. So, and that's definitely a struggle that a lot of people face. So so talking about it in an open manner might help them to open up as well.
I disagree a bit. I don't think that should be there, because why should we allow people to like wear makeup and like show be as beautiful as they want to be, but can't allow people to alter their image through technological stuff? And that's sort of discriminating. That's sort of discriminating like one side of the people, just because uh, I like to be tech savvy and like use my thing in that way, or some people, maybe they look amazing and they have a shitty camera, and whereas like this person actually paid a lot of money to buy a good camera or like got good lighting, and either like everything has to be shown or nothing has to be shown. By discriminating on like one type of people, I disagree with that.
Wait, so what exactly you're trying to say? Who am I discriminating against when I say digitally altered? I mean, like when you're brushing the outlines, when you're trying to make a person thin, when you're trying to remove the wrinkles off the face. So that's what I'm talking about is digitally altered. So I'm not talking about lighting. I'm not talking about them having a great camera. All that has nothing to do with when I say digitally altered.
Oh no, I agree, but like you can also put makeup to hide your pimples and everything, right? So why can that be allowed but not be allowed to take care of your image? Whereas with makeup it's like a one day thing, whereas with an image it could be like a permanent thing. And already we have to live with like shitty Aadhaar cards and passport photos. Do we have to like do that with even our profile pictures and everything? And I actually don't edit a lot, so like I am not defining myself, but I have spoken to people who think it's who they get a good self image by doing these things, and by bringing in these things you are unknowingly attacking sort of like what they want. I think that's my opinion.
Right. Can I quickly tie what the both of you are saying to loneliness about how, social media and not knowing what's altered or not, whether it's physically or digitally, even if it's just people choosing to only show the positive on social media instead of actually connecting with you, or how Instagram has become generally very performative in terms of whether it be virtue signaling about social justice. Hey, I posted an infographic, I'm a good person. Or, everyone is only putting up pictures that are of their vacations and of them looking their best, but posting stuff about how you should accept yourself where you are. Do you think that contributes to people feeling lonely because now they're thinking, wow, I am only seeing my worst sides, I'm not really seeing anybody else's?
100%. Uh, because you can feel lonely from that in like multiple ways. One is you just see like all the different reactions that people get to their posts of like this vacation or this amazing thing they did with this partner, or the super fun trip they had with their friends. And you can feel lonely because of that, because why am I not having any of those fun things in my life? And so many people are reacting to that. That can create loneliness. And like you can start questioning your relationships with people. Are they as meaningful? Because it doesn't seem like you have much content to post about. um, yeah, so it can definitely contribute to that. And along with like the digital altering question, I think it just has to go with a lot of people's comfort and like just stability in a way, and confidence in their relationships and what they have, so that even when other people post on their Instagram and their social media pages about the lives they're having, to recognize that you're seeing like a very flat plane of their life, and it's not a representation of everything. Because uh in the older I've gotten, the more I realize, the family with a huge house with like many cars, they're in debt, right? And the person who has a wonderful relationship with their partner has no friends. Or like there's a lot of like ors and buts and like different aspects to people's lives that you don't always get to see. But for you, you get to see your whole life in like 4K quality. And like that's part of loneliness, right? You are stuck with your thoughts a lot. Um, and you don't always just see the actions, when more people, everyone else outside of you only sees your actions.
I agree, and that's why I kind of said this because sometimes people want, like affirmative words. Sometimes say, "Hey, great photo. Where did you go?" And those sort of things, which could brighten up their otherwise sad day, or something else that's going on in their life. And this could be the thing that brings them joy. And and social media, like because of the amount of reach that we have, you can find communities where you would be able to find people who would actually encourage you for just about anything. And because of that, uh, and plus, like as they both have said, you're going to feel lonely either way, like through other things. And sometimes loneliness actually tells you of what you want. It's sort of like anger. uh, Anger sort of like is protective of something that is important to you. And like actually, think about the awareness that loneliness is giving you. Why this is bothering you? Maybe it's bothering you because you have a negative self-image of your body image, and that could be because people have like never praised you for how you look, or people have actually like said derogatory or degrading things of your body or of your face and those sort of things. And if that is the case, address those things, because at any point in our life we'll always find ways to like up yourself in terms of how you look. But like being able to get to a point where you're able to be comfortable with yourself, what you want to do, how you get there, that's your journey, that's your story. Go for it.
So I had a question. I kind of looked up if there were different types of loneliness, and there was a article from Psychology Today that stated 7 different types of loneliness. And I'm wondering, if I list out all of them, if you've had experiences with some of them more than others, if any of them sound more relatable to you, um, and experiences you might have had. So they are new situation loneliness. You've moved to a new place, you don't know anybody, everything's unfamiliar, you're lonely. One is I'm different. Um, it's you could be in a familiar place, but you feel different and isolated from other people because of different characteristics that you might have. Um, One is no sweetheart loneliness. You don't have a romantic partner, so you feel lonely because of that. No animal loneliness, which is some people really want to have animals to connect with in their life, and they don't have that connection, and it's something that's important to people outside of just human relationships. No time for me loneliness. You're always you have a lot of friends, but you feel like they aren't committing enough time to you, in a way, like there are no meaningful, like you're not their best friend, right? So it's like the relationships you have are friendly, but you're not friends. um that's the one type of loneliness, feeling like relationships are kind of superficial in a way. Untrustworthy friends loneliness. You've ever been doubtful of your friends who might be kind and helpful, or you don't trust them, so feeling like you have untrustworthy friends. And this last one is quiet presence loneliness. You miss someone's quiet presence in your room, or you miss having someone to hang out with, and you're just missing like a quiet partner in the area. So uh, these are all of them. Hopefully some of them resonated with you. At least for me, um, on the Instagram live earlier today, I kind of mentioned that I've been in a single room for the past 2 years, and I miss having the presence of a roommate, because it's like someone to just be there, so I'm not like constantly alone by myself. Even if we don't talk to each other all the time, I miss having that kind of person around me. So anything resonate with you and your experiences?
It's when you were talking about like I'm different kind of loneliness, the first thing that came to my mind was this: when I present on diversity and inclusion for team building, I always use this quote. I forget who it's by, but I'll try to attribute it in the description. So it's: diversity is being called to the dance, and inclusion is being asked to dance with. And that's how you define the difference between there just being diversity in a group and you feeling included. So I can think of so many occasions in college, especially because I went to college in a country that wasn't mine. So I went to a different country for it, and I remember feeling on multiple occasions being part of spaces where not only did I personality wise feel like I was different, and I don't mean to sound like, oh, I'm edgy. I'm not like other girls, like not in that way. I just felt like, wow, I'm approaching things differently. But there was also kind of this very visible reminder of how I'm different, which was like my origin or my race or my gender, even at times. So I am, curious to at some point reflect on how loneliness can, intersect with maybe our identities, and how that might compound our differences, if at all. So that one definitely resonated with me.
For me, what resonated with me was not the thing that I felt, but the thing that I was scared that could happen but didn't, which was I got a friend group in my first semester of college, and then I'm still friends with them. And for me, I was like a tad bit worried that if I like what if I don't become friends with people soon enough, and like when everybody has a squad, a college family, a college group, and then if I don't have that, then how am I going to do 4 years of college? Because sure, you can have you can always find friends to do your homeworks with or things like that, because like in each time in your class you can talk to the guy who's sitting next to you. But like friends are people who are like more than that. It's not just about asking for help when you have problems on your homework. And I was a tad bit worried that that could happen, and I am very privileged to say like it didn't happen to me, but I do, uh, knowing that it's a statistic possibility. I am sure that like somebody probably felt that, and I kind of feel even though it did happen to me, I do feel bad that there are people who haven't found their group in their 1 year, and the let's say they join a group, a friend group, say in the second year, and then whenever in the friend group, whenever they would say, hey, this guy joined in the second year. So sometimes you might start minimizing your first year because you probably had a great year, but then you were not with the people that you found. And it's always good at the earliest you find it, but there's a lot of things that could easily bother you.
You're welcome, Akshay.
Actually, yeah, he did help me a lot.
The feeling is mutual. Likewise. Yeah. So yeah, it was great to have found Akshay and the group of friends. So I really I was able to place myself when Ilakkiya, when you said the new situation, new place. I think it was the first one, and then quite someone who you just want. It doesn't have to be a conversation. The last one, so
Yeah.
where you just want someone who's just there listening to you, or just both of you are doing different things. You might just be working on your homework, the other person might be doing something else, but just that presence would I really miss my roommate so sometimes. So it's pretty yeah it's definitely something that a lot of people experience. So I was able to resonate with a few of the things you said. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, and those definitely aren't the only types of loneliness. Actually, you were describing something that I don't think like was explicitly one of the 7 things that I said, but it's like a type of loneliness. So yeah, different experiences. So the way to kind of avoid some of these problems would be to create really good relationships with people, right? And like I kind of spoke about how loneliness can help reflect on situations, therefore creating good relationships. But what are some of the ways that you maintain the friendships and connections that don't make you feel lonely? Right? Like you are not lonely because you have those connections. So what are the ways you have maintained and grown those connections, those relationships?
Best thing about friendship, I think, is that no matter what happens, you can always become friends again. You can always get back to talking to someone, and so that's something that's not said enough. Because uh, with friendship, you can have a fight, and you can, or you might like not talk to them for like say half a year, and then still get back into it, and that's something big that helps to make sure that we're not being more lonelier than we already do. And I want to say shout out to that.
I love that. I love that. That's being very mindful of your connections, I think is cool. I think also learning what your friends enjoy in terms of connections, or finding small occasions to text them even though you don't have, you might not have time for a full call or to go see them in person, maybe their birthday, maybe if you know that there's a significant day happening in their life. Or for me, most importantly, I grew up where, not in my family but in my friend circle, they always discuss these like power dynamics of how there's always the person who people want to be friends with, and you should always kind of be like the cool person and let people approach you. And I just kind of grew out of that mindset by knowing that friendship is supposed to not involve power dynamics. If you miss somebody or if you need connection, you're not supposed to feel bad if you reach out to them or if they haven't reached out to you already. So having that humility and just accessibility, and not letting people tell you what friendship should be like, or who should be texting first. Like if you feel valued, then you're valued. Don't, yeah, not relying too much on other people to tell you how you should feel about either being lonely or reaching out to friends when you need them. So that was definitely important for me to grow out of.
If I can do another shout out, I would say, like reaching out to people is like a big thing, and you can always do it.
You
It's
can reach out to us if you guys want new buddies, if someone to talk to. We're always there. Yeah, continue, Akshay.
yeah. So like I just want to say the action of reaching out is like pretty great. Don't think you might look desperate, because we all want to have friends, and maybe like you might seem desperate not because you reach out, but more because maybe they might be busy, and they might not have the time to spend, and like and that could be a case, but they're never gonna think that because being with people, hanging out with people is a very beautiful thing, and nobody's gonna think, oh man, this guy wants to do it like way more than I want to do it, and so maybe you might feel those things like when you're a child, or if you still feel it even now. Maybe like a year later, you might think, what? Looking back at this year, I'm glad you did this. I'm glad you reached out, and I have friends. I'm very glad they reached out to me, and that made me closer with them. And I've reached out to people who have said the same things to me as well. So I totally agree with Sias.
Yeah, excellent points. Pretty powerful stories shared today. So I'm very happy to be on this call. For closing thoughts, I'd just like to share a quote that I read from an article. So it talks about how it goes back to when I think Sia mentioned something about, or one of you guys mentioned something about how you don't have anyone to talk to, and that can result in, say, journals or writing something or in art. So this article talked about how history of art is the record of people who couldn't find anyone in the vicinity to talk to. So it's their way of communicating with someone in the future, and that's a pretty cool way to think about art, I think. So yeah, that's I'd like to end with that, and yeah, good chat.
Yeah. Actually, you brought up something interesting at the end that I kind of want to incorporate into my closing thoughts. Uh, if you know that someone might be feeling lonely, or if they're reaching out to you, don't let them feel lonely. If you like, it's an experience that all of us have, and so give someone else the gift of your time, your attention, your friendship, your love, your affection, whatever. If you know someone might benefit from it, and even if you don't think they need it, it's still a wonderful thing to do, to be a good friend to other people. And if you're ever feeling lonely, um, try to figure out why you're feeling lonely so you can figure out what you can do next to overcome it or address it well, in case it's a negative emotion for you. And know that being alone is different from loneliness, and you can be alone without feeling lonely.
For my closing thoughts, I want to give shout outs again. This time, talking about loneliness. Loneliness is a serious topic. It's not really. It doesn't. It's not. Isn't always easy. So I want to shout out to you three here because I've known each of you here for like a number of years, and I have built I think I've built a good relationship, good friendship with all of you individually as well as like together with the group. That we have a good group dynamic, but at the same time, I can have a call with you for like say an hour and not talk about anything related to Chitralayam, and that's something like it can only be done with good friendships, and I think I have that with three of you.
Actually, I don't know what
Well,
you expect after the call. do I have to Venmo you money for saying all of this nice stuff? I don't know. Pandemic is a difficult time for a lot of people. We got to catch up.
Oh my God.
no, but I've genuinely noticed that about Akshay is how good and intentional he is at making people feel good about themselves by just even
Akshay
being
is saying it.
friends. He'll remember good things about you and he will bring them up in moments that mean a lot to you. So, Akshay, we see you.
Yeah.
You're a great friend.
Jokes aside.
Yeah, jokes aside. But jokes back on, huh? Like I'm serious all the time, especially with friends. But yeah, closing thoughts from my end, just, be friends with both your loneliness and your need to connect with others. Surround yourself with friends who don't impose dignity on anywhere you're at. If you want to be alone for the rest of your life, find people who will support you in that and we'll give you the space for that. If you want to connect with people, feel free to reach out to them. The right ones will return your energy and they'll be there for you. So
Like a
yeah,
boomerang. Yeah.
yeah, like boomerang, like a
Yeah.
two-way, nice little two-way street. So well, thank you so much, folks, for listening in today. Let us know if you like our new format of trying things out. And if you have any suggestions on topics that you'd like for us to cover, please let us know. You can reach out to us on either our Instagram handle or just leave a comment on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for watching. For more discussions, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Also, make sure to like and comment more topics that you'd like to see us discuss. We'll see you next time.